Welcome. Today in Inventor, you guys are going to make some basic shapes using the sketching features and the various features to turn those 2D sketches into 3D objects. Make sure you start by having Autodesk Inventor open. If you're still loading it, please pause the video and wait for it to load and get to the main homepage for Inventor. Remember, with the homepage, we have the area for new projects and saved files below, which should be blank for you guys, or maybe have one or two files that you previously made. To get started, we go up to the top left, we click on New. We're going to make sure we choose English, and we use a standard part. Make sure it's a part. It's the yellow cube. Once we have both of those options selected, we click Create, and give it a second, it'll load a blank part file. When the file loads, please make sure that you have the model browser on the left, you have your ribbon up top, you have your view cube, and you have your navigation toolbar. Those are the four tools that you guys will need to be able to create objects and navigate around your part. So the main two that we're going to be focusing on is the 3D model tab and the sketch tab. The sketch tab will be used to create 2D sketches. The 3D model tab will be used to create and modify 3D parts. So since we don't have anything here, we have to start in the sketch tab. We're going to start off by making a simple cube. So to make a cube, that's a square. A square is a subset of a rectangle, so we can click on the rectangle. Now there are multiple options. You can select rectangles by various methods. 2-point, which means that you select the two corners, kind of where you see the little dots on the picture there. You can select a 3-pointed rectangle, a rectangle using a center point, slots, polygons. So we're just going to go with the regular rectangle. Once we select that, we need to pick a plane on which we're going to sketch. You can pick any of these three, but we're going to start with the XY plane. Once you do that, it should change the perspective, and you should have the coordinate system for the XY graph. And in the middle of that yellow dot is your 0, 0 point. As you move the pointer around, you can see the coordinates changing. So, here's the positive XY, this is negative XY, and all of it should be in inches because we chose that at the beginning. We're going to start by making our point with the origin. If you're starting off, it's probably a good practice to start whatever you're working on with the origin point as a reference point. You can see I have a yellow dot where my cursor is, but when I hover over a thing of significance, it'll snap to it and it'll have a green dot. That means I am hovered over it, and you can see that it says 0 inches, 0 inches. So we click once. Now we can start dragging out. As you can see, it starts showing you the dimensions. And then we click a second time to make a cube. So you can see how there's two blue lines and two green lines. Now the different colors mean that there's various states. The blue line means that it's fully constrained, as in you can't move them. Like it's locked. I can click on that line and I can try to drag it, but it's stuck on those axes. It's referenced to them, so it's not going to move. Now I can come over and grab this point and I can drag it and make the cube bigger or smaller. We want to make this a 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch cube, so we need to make sure that this square is the proper size. So to do that, we come up to dimensions. You're going to click the bottom blue line, drag it down a little bit, click a second time. It'll pop up with a little box where you can edit it. So we want to be 1 inch. So we're going to type in 1, and then you can either hit enter or click on the check mark, and now it'll expand the line to make it 1 inches. We're going to do the same thing on the left. Pull it out, type in 1, and click enter. You can zoom out using your scroller button, or you can use the zoom function or the hand to kind of move around so you can see everything. When you see me exit a command, I'm hitting the escape button. So right there, I hit the escape button. So you see how the hand's highlighted. I'll click escape, and that means I'm just removing my current command. So I'm just back to a normal mouse cursor. So now we can see our cube is now all dark blue. So if I were to try to grab this and move it, we can't, because it's fully defined. We have the origin point in these two dimensions, and that is making this cube a fixed object. It's fully constrained, so therefore there's nothing we can do to edit it without modifying the values. Now, if you always, if you ever need to go back and edit a value, you can always just double click on something again, and I can type in 2, hit enter. So you can always go back and edit anything you want. And going forward, even after we create a 3D object, you can always go back and edit the 2D object as shown, which I will show later. So we have our 2D object. Now we want to be a 3D object. So we need to finish the sketch by clicking this check mark up here. And it'll take us back out to a 3D view. By looking at the cube, we can see right, front, top. So it's showing us an isometric view. And we are going to go to the 3D model tab. Now we have different options, but we're going to extrude it to get a cube because that's going to make a straight extrusion. We'll click extrude. Now since there's only one object here, one closed boundary, which means the set of lines makes a full loop, it auto selects it. When you have multiple options, it will leave it blank and you have to click to select it. So by default, it sets to 1 inches, which is what we wanted anyway. There's other things you can do. You can go to taper, which has an angle. So if we were to do 45, sorry, negative 45 because we want it smaller, you would create a pyramid to where it kind of tapers down. So you can play around with that. 0 means it's just going to project out straight. So that angle is how this line projects out of your 2D object. Click back to the shape tab. 1 inches, you can choose the direction. And then once it looks right, this is the preview, it's not actually done. You click OK. So this looks good, it looks like a cube. We click OK, and we have a cube. So we're going to go back and create a new sketch. So we have a cube. Now let's create a different shape. So we're going to click on sketch again, and we're going to do a cylinder, but we're going to do it two different ways. So we're going to do rectangle again. Now we need to select a surface to draw on. Now by default, when we click a new sketch, it doesn't bring up those coordinate systems because we've already started. You can click on one of the boxes and you draw on the surface. So if we wanted to add on to this box, we would click on it and we can draw on the surface, like as if this was a physical cube and you had a pen or marker and you were drawing on it. We want to use that same coordinate system. So if you come back here to this folder on the left, you click the little down arrow and we have our planes again. So we can click on them. We started with the XY plane, so we're going to go ahead and click on the XY plane again. And again, it shifts our perspective so we are looking straight onto it. I'm going to use my mouse wheel to kind of zoom out and then zoom in. You'll notice how I'm kind of moving the image around. When you zoom in or out, it centers around where your cursor is. So if you zoom out on the side, it zooms out kind of like that, where if I zoom out over the object, that object kind of stays in the middle. So you can kind of use zooming in and out with the mouse wheel to kind of quickly navigate around. So we're going to just, create a box next to it. Now I'm going to click it on the x-axis here. It kind of snaps. You see how the yellow lines kind of snap, so I'm kind of following along. I'm just going to make another roughly 1 inch rectangle. I'm going to go ahead and dimension it. 1 inch, enter. 1 inch, enter. So now we have another cube, or sorry, square. And we're going to click Finish Sketch. Now, how do we create a cylinder out of a square? 3D model, and instead of doing extrude, we're going to select revolve this time. Again, since there's only one object in this sketch, it auto selects it. Now what we need to do, why it doesn't show us a 3D object is there's more information. You see how profile, the arrow is white? That means it's already selected, it's been satisfied. Now there's another one, this orange arrow for axis. Now this is what you rotate around. Since it's a revolve, you need to pick something to rotate around. Click on that button and then you select one of these lines. It doesn't have to be this line. You could select another drawing. If you drew a line outside of it, you'd get that donut shape I showed you guys earlier. Now, depending on which side we pick, it's going to rotate around that one. I don't want it colliding with this one. So if I click this, it would rotate around and into the cube. So we're going to play it safe and we're going to go to the other side here. So now once we pick that again, it shows us a revolve. It takes that square and it kind of spins it around this vertical line and sweeps out a shape. It looks good, so I'm going to click OK. Now, since we had it go 1 inch across and we revolved it, this is now a 2-inch wide cylinder. If you hit the home button, it'll kind of zoom in on everything. But we can go back. Let's say we want it to be only 1 inch across. We can go back in, and underneath all of your solid objects, this will keep track of every single move you've made. So we have our extrusion, we have the sketch that went with that extrusion. You can go back and edit that sketch, or our revolve. So sketch 2 became the revolve. If we double click on that sketch, we can go back in and edit it. So I'm going to go ahead, double click on that bottom dimension and type in 0.5 inches. Because whenever you revolve something, it's going to become twice as wide as your sketch. So if we want to be the same width as the cube, we're going to shrink this down. And now we're not going to have to re-revolve it. It's automatically going to, once we click Finish Sketch, edit it to adapt to the changes we made. So now it kind of sucked it in, it shrunk it down, and now we have a cylinder with the same width. And when you're looking at it from a side perspective, you can't really tell, but it uses some subtle shading, and then there's no harsh kind of border line. So you see on the cube you have a black line showing that there's like edges. On this one you can see it's slightly different. You have the black lines on the top and the bottom, but you don't have lines on the side showing that it's kind of a gradual curve. We can hit that little house. And now we go back to our isometric view, and we can see our cube and our cylinder. Now we can create a cylinder using a circle and an extrusion. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that one. So we're going to go back to Sketch. We're going to click on Circle this time. And since we want this to be in the same orientation as this cylinder, we want it to be right next to it, we're going to go back to our origin. And now we don't want to click on XY because we're going to draw a circle on the side there and it would stick out the other direction. So hover over it. You see how XZ plane, that's kind of where that circle is laying for the cylinder. We're going to go ahead and click XZ. So now we're on the top perspective. So we see the one circle here. So let's just come somewhere next to it again. Stay on the axis, let it snap to it, and we're going to just make a circle and drag it out to be about 1 inch in diameter. Remember, diameter is the distance across, where radius is from the center to the edge. Again, we can use our dimensioning tool. Just click it somewhere, and we're going to type in 1. So now you can see this circle is the same size as this circle. We can click Finish Sketch. It brings us back to our isometric view, and now, kind of like what we did with the cube, we're going to extrude it. So we're going to take that circle shape and we're going to just lift it up to create a solid object. So 3D model, extrude. Again, there's only one sketch to choose from, so it automatically selects it. Now you can see these look identical. 1 inch, everything looks good. We're going to click OK. And now we have two identical objects from the top or from the side. And they were both created using different methods. The revolve with a sketch or the revolve with a circle. So you can create the same shape using different methods, and this will just kind of depend on what your goal is, or kind of what planes you have to sketch on, or what's available. Depending on what kind of geometry you want to reference. There's no right or wrong way as long as you're getting your desired result. So that was revolve and extrude. So let's go ahead and try a loft. So a loft, you need to create two different sketches that you'll then connect together. So this is going to be a little bit more complicated. We're going to start with, again, sketch. Let's start with a line, because let's make a triangle. We need to, again, pick a surface to sketch on. So let's draw on the bottom again, since that's kind of our floor. We're going to go XZ. So I'm going to come over here next to, and if you ever want to rotate these little arrows, so boom, so we can kind of go sideways here. You can use that to kind of rotate your view around. And again, as you kind of play around with this, you'll just kind of become more familiar. Somehow I accidentally clicked it. You can hit the escape button to cancel a command. So since I had to cancel it, I need to click line again. So I'm just going to find a point somewhere on the x-axis. I'm going to make a equilateral triangle, which means all three sides are going to be the same and all three angles are going to be the same. So I'm just going to come out here and make a line. Come down to the x-axis again, make another line, and then come over and make a third line, and then you see the green dot. That means we're connecting back to our original line. And then after that, hit escape to get out of the drawing command. Now this is green, which means it's completely unconstrained. We can modify this triangle, drag it around. The light blue means it's just selected. That dark blue means it would be fixed. So once we dimension it, it'll turn to dark blue. So we need to, first of all, dimension each side. We can make it 1 inch. Now, you got to watch out here because sometimes it'll move stuff around. Since it moved it kind of like how we didn't want it to, we can do something like this. We can either manually drag it using the move command, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension it from the origin. So I'm going to come over here, select this edge here, select this corner. So I'm just going to make that 5 inches. And now you see how it kind of moved that triangle base. Now this is a little messed up, but we'll fix that with dimensions. Another dimension. When you click between two lines that are not parallel or perpendicular, it's going to give you an angle. So triangles have 180 degrees. There's 3 sides to a triangle. So for an equilateral triangle, remember an equilateral triangle has 3 identical sides and 3 identical angles. 180 divided by 3 is 60 degrees. So we're going to type in 60. So now you see it kept the line length the same, but it kind of moved it all around. So we're going to do the same thing with the bottom here. And we need, again, 30. Sorry, that was a mistake. Hit escape, double click on 30. It should be 60. Boom. So now you can see we have what looks like an equilateral triangle. Now, if you've taken geometry, you know to fully define a triangle, you need um, three pieces of information, either 3 lengths, 3 angles, or a combination of sides and angles. But we have 3. Now, the reason why this isn't dark yet is because we can grab it and move it up and down. Remember, we only constrained it in the X direction. So if we want to constrain it in the Y direction, we can dimension it again. We can use this right here, this line here that's on the axis, and click on the bottom. Yeah. It'll sometimes give you an error. I misclicked. Click on that. Click on the bottom line here. Now when we type in 0, it'll bring it back down onto the axis, and now it's dark blue again. So that means hit escape to get out of your dimensioning command, and then if we try to move it around, click it, drag it, it will not move. So now that we know it's fixed, it's fully constrained. So that's why the dimensioning tool is powerful, and it's important to make sure what we're creating. You can always drag to move the dimensions around. You can kind of make it look prettier. Kind of like, I wanted the 60s to be visible, not like out here. Again, it comes down to preference. It's not like there's a right or a wrong way. These are used to just kind of help you create the shapes that you desire. So we have our triangle. We can click Finish Sketch. Now to loft, we need 2 sketches. So we're going to have to come in and create another sketch. So we're not ready to go to the 3D model tab. We're going to go back to the Sketch tab. We're going to select Circle. But we need to sketch on a plane. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. We can either create a new plane, because that plane, we want it to be in the same direction, like so flat, but we don't want it to be in the same level, so we need to be higher up. So we can either create a new plane by offsetting it, or we can kind of cheat and use the height of these tops here, so everything would be 1 inch high. So we can click on this. This doesn't mean we're necessarily drawing on this circle, it just means we're using that circle's plane as a reference point. So under 3D model, there are planes here, and when if we weren't in Sketch, this would be selectable, and you could create new planes by offsetting them, or using existing geometry as reference points. But if you have something else out there that kind of gives you the plane that you want, you're good. So we're going to create a circle. So we're going to click roughly in the center, and we're going to come out and we're going to make it roughly 1 inch. Hit escape again to exit, and we're going to dimension that circle. Make it 1 inch diameter, hit enter. Now the other thing we want is we want this to be centered. So we need to dimension it with respect to its location. So we can use the center circle here. No, hit escape to get out of it. Sorry. We want to use this line again as our reference point. So remember, we want the circle to be roughly Now, the problem is that we want the triangle isn't like 1 inch across. So if we were to type in 0.5, it would move it up too high. So we'd have to do some math, but I don't want to do math. So I'm gonna delete the dimension. So you can click on the dimension by deleting it. Sorry for kind of the improvisation. Um, I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do this. So we want this to be roughly in the center of the triangle. I'm gonna just move this circle to the side real quick. So what we can do is we can sketch. So we're gonna find kind of the midpoint. Hmm. We can't reference that midpoint. All right, so hold on, I'm gonna finish sketch because we need to create a reference point on this sketch. So we're gonna have to go back in and edit it. So this was sketch 5, as you can see by highlighting sketch 5. We need to go back into sketch 4. So I'm gonna go ahead and just rotate our view again. So we're gonna create some lines on this triangle to create a reference point. So you see we can go to the snap to the center point here. I'm just drawing lines between center points and angles. So you see, boom. So now this is the center, the geometric center of the triangle. Finish sketch. And now we can go back into sketch 5. Again, I'm going to rotate around our view. And now we can use that as a reference. So we're going to click the circle, drag it. Now the problem is that it's not in the same sketch. So you can't perfectly get it, but you can line it up the best you can. Kind of zoom in. And we get it good enough for our purposes right now. We're going to click Finish Sketch. So now you see how we have a circle up top and we have a sketch down below. Now if I go sideways, you can see that they're over each other, but they're separated by a distance of 1 inch. So now we come over to 3D Model and we're going to click on Loft. So for Loft, there's multiple things that we need to select. We need to select our sections and our rails. So for our sections, we're going to select that sketch, and then we're going to select this sketch. And, why is it not allowing me to pick both? There we go. 1. Sketch 1. Sketch 5. Cancel. Hold on. Loft. Want a new solid. Sketch 5. Sketch 4. Sketch 5. There we go. Rails, we just want to go in between the centers. We go back and delete these lines, see if they're affecting our ability to loft this. Loft, click on the circle, click on that. All right. Sorry about that. Sometimes this can be really finicky. So those extra lines there, we're kind of breaking this triangle up into multiple pieces, so it wasn't sure what we wanted to select. So we didn't need those anymore since we had our circle, so we went back in and we deleted it. So we can click OK, and now we create our kind of weird Frankenstein piece. So basically, it's a circle on the top, a triangle on the bottom, and then it kind of morphs between those two shapes as it transitions. So If something doesn't work right, you kind of gotta just play around with the settings and kind of work with it until you get it. So 4 basic shapes using the 3 different commands. I'm going to leave sweep out for now because that's kind of a little more complicated. But I want to show you something else we can do real quick with the extrude command. So let's say we want a hole in our square, our cube. We can sketch, we're going to choose a circle, and we're going to just click on the surface. Now what we can do is we can reference it. So you see the dotted lines that come out? That means we're in the middle here, and we can make a circle, and let's make it 0.5 inches. So we're going to click, type in 0.5, hit enter, and now we have a sketch on top of our cube. So I'm going to hit finish sketch, so it's like, we just took a marker and we drew on the surface. We can go back to 3D model, and we can click extrude again. So we have to select this, and now you see by default it extrudes, it creates, so it's coming out 1 inch. But what we can do is this middle button here is cut. The third one is intersect, where it'll only take like the objects of like what the intersection is, but we're going to go to cut. So instead of coming out, you can see this kind of red color extending through it, and it's removing material. So we can click OK, and now we have a cylinder cut through it. So if we click on top, we can now see all the way through our object. There is the hole command. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. So this is like it auto generates holes through objects. So but it's more kind of used for like screws or places where you have bolts going through. We can click on the surface, and you see how it kind of just placed the hole. We would need to reference it. So we'd want to reference placement linear. Let's change it to concentric. We pick the plane, and there, now it's perfectly in the middle of this circle. Concentric reference would be there, and now you can see it slightly adjusted it. That red dotted line is the circle we want it to be in the middle of, and now we can just change the hole size 0.5. So now we have the same sized hole. Again, multiple ways of doing the same outcome, and that went all the way through. Now let me leave you with one more way to do a hole. A hole doesn't always have to go all the way through it, so we're going to choose the other cylinder, click on the top of it, change from linear to concentric, click that plane, click that reference point. Now let's say we don't want to go all the way through. Termination is how we choose how deep it goes through. So through all means it'll go through everything. We can set 2, and we can click a separate plane, and it'll go to that plane. Or we can do distance. Remember, this is 1 inch tall, so 1 inch means it goes through all of it. Now if we type in 0.5 inches, that means it goes halfway through the object, and this can be shown by going into a side view. You can also see this little point down here. Now that's the drill point. So if you use like an actual drill, the drills kind of have a little point to them. So it's going to look like that. Now you can choose a flat point, and you kind of get a flat point here. So it kind of depends on thinking about like how is it going to be made. Is it going to be used like using a drill with a point or a flat? Is it going to be a tapped hole, tapered hole? You can put threads on it, but we can click it. It looks good. So now we have a hole. So when we look at it from above, you can see it's shadowed, but it's still gray in there, showing that there's not, there's material in there. We can't see all the way through it. So that's about it for this video. The last thing we can do is just do some fillets. Get this little box. You can, just fill at the top of this box here. Now you can change the radius, so that's how big the curve. So the smaller the number, so I'm just going to add a 0 in front of it. You see how it becomes a smaller radius, or if we were to make this a bigger number, like put 5, it becomes huge, but that's too big and you kind of lose the geometry, so let's remove that. 0.125 kind of looked nice. I'm not sure if that's its default value, I forget, or if it's kind of it tries to pick something that's appropriate to the size. Again, looks good, and we can click OK. So now we have a box and cylinders with holes and this weird little loft between a triangle and a circle. So once you get to this point where all 4 of these objects are created, go ahead and save your file. Now you do this by clicking the orange File button. Go to Save As. Make sure you don't click Save, click Save As. Now, when you save, make sure you save in your Documents folder. So don't save it on your desktop. Don't save it in the tutorial folder. Click the down arrow. Go to Documents. Now, you might want to create a tab for Inventor files. So I created one called Inventor. And we can, name it Assignment 1. For you guys, put your name in there. Name it, Assignment 1 and then your name, or your name and then Assignment 1. Either way, that way it'll be just a little bit easier for me to go through them all. Click Save, and now it's saved onto the computer. I don't believe we can save directly to OneDrive because we don't have the option with like OneDrive built in, kind of like how you can on Word. Yeah, no. So you're going to have to save it in your Documents folder. In your, hopefully you make an Inventor folder just to kind of keep track of everything. And then, later you would upload it manually to Office 365 to OneDrive. So it's there in the cloud, just one, in case any files get deleted, or two, something happens to your computer and you don't have access to it the next day, so you can come back and be able to get to your files. So once this is saved, it'll show you the name up in the top center. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly show you guys how to get to OneDrive to upload it again. So again, you make sure you click on the Chrome class link button. Click to sign in. Now, I think when you're on the school Wi-Fi, it automatically logs you in. If not, log in, sign in. We'll go into Office 365. And we click on the OneDrive button, the little cloud. So again, you have your files. You can create a new folder. You can call it Robotics Inventor. So now you can save your robotics files. So here you need to upload. Again, get in the habit of using folders. It just helps keep everything more organized. It's easier to find. You're going to click the upload button. Now you're going to need to go to your Documents folder. So Documents, go to Inventor, and then select your Assignment 1. Click Open, and it uploads it, and now it's on OneDrive for you to be able to access remotely and access from any computer. If something happens to where your file gets deleted, or you're on a different computer, or your computer breaks and you just don't have access to it that day, my first question will be, do you put it on OneDrive? So this is kind of me just letting you know, please put it on OneDrive, because that way you're not kind of stuck being tied to your computer, just in case anything should happen. So after that, you're done. Congratulations, you made some shapes. And as we go, we're going to I'm going to introduce you to kind of more and more of these tools. We're going to build up our repertoire, our little toolbox, and then hopefully by the end of it all, you guys will feel way more comfortable working in Inventor, because it kind of looks intimidating. It has its kind of quirks that you need to work around, kind of like with selecting the loft here. But eventually you can kind of always get everything to work, and you can keep always refining. So we can always go back and change anything, like for loft, sketch 5. We can always go back 0.25, make it smaller. You can literally always go back and edit things, and it just that's the nice thing. If you were to hand draw this, you'd have to erase it and redraw it. Everything is kind of referenced. It keeps it together in this what's called the tree. So you can always kind of see each and every, the holes, the extrusion. So you can always go back. You can change the size of the holes. You can go back and edit anything. Let's say you have a different bolt size and you need to update it. All you do is go back and, edit your hole size, 0.25, and, you know, it does it automatically for you. And then if you have um, assembly files, with multiple parts in it, it'll go back and update those too. So, one change made here changes everything that uses these parts. So it's nice how kind of everything is linked together. So again, you don't need to update there. Go ahead. You can update it, file. After you've saved it the first time, you can just click save. And then, it saves the updated version of the file. You need to go back in to OneDrive and re-upload because we did edit it. So um, I'm not going to be a stickler on if you save that final little change, but the main point was coming through and making these 4 objects. So thank you for following along, and have a good day.